Amara's hand trembled as she stood frozen in the marble hallway of the enormous mansion, her bare feet leaving muddy prints on the pristine white floor. She had only come here to beg for food, clutching her empty stomach that hadn't seen a proper meal in 3 days. But now, staring at the wall before her, she felt the world tilt beneath her feet. There, hanging in an ornate gold frame among dozens of other photographs, was a picture she knew as well as her own heartbeat. A little girl with gap-toothed smile, wearing a yellow dress with butterfly patterns, sitting on a swing in a garden bursting with purple bougainvillea. That dress. That garden. That swing. Amara's breath caught in her throat because she was that little girl. This was a photograph from her childhood, from a life she barely remembered, from a time before everything fell apart. "How is this possible?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Her fingers reached toward the frame, trembling so violently she had to pull them back. Behind her, she heard footsteps approaching, heavy and deliberate. The security guard who had reluctantly let her into the service entrance was probably coming to throw her out. But Amara couldn't move. She couldn't tear her eyes away from that photograph, from the impossible reality staring back at her. The footsteps grew louder, closer. A deep voice called out, "Who's there?" "James, I told you no visitors today." Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. She should run. She should hide. But her legs felt like they were made of concrete. The footsteps stopped directly behind her. She could feel someone's presence, could hear breathing that seemed to pause mid-breath. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, rough with emotion, the man said, "Dear God, Chioma." Amara spun around to face a tall man in his late 50s, wearing an expensive navy suit that probably cost more than she had seen in her entire 18 years on the streets. His face was lined with age and something else, something that looked like old grief. His eyes, deep brown and glistening with unshed tears, were locked on her face as if he were seeing a ghost. His hand came up to his mouth, and he staggered backward slightly, gripping the wall for support. "Chioma," he said again, louder this time, his voice breaking. "Is it really you?" "My name is Amara," she managed to say, her own voice sounding strange and distant to her ears. "I don't know who Chioma is. I just came here to ask for food. But that photograph." She pointed at the wall with a shaking finger. "That's me. I know it's me. I remember that dress. I remember that garden. How do you have this picture?" The man's face went through a series of emotions: shock, hope, disbelief, and finally something that looked like joy mixed with agony. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself, as if afraid she might disappear if he got too close. "You don't remember," he whispered. "Of course you don't remember. You were only 4 years old." "Remember what?" Amara demanded, feeling panic rising in her chest. "Who are you? Why do you have my photograph?" The man's eyes filled with tears that began to stream down his weathered cheeks. "Because," he said, his voice thick with emotion, 23 years ago, my daughter was kidnapped from that very garden. My Chioma. My baby girl. And you, standing here in front of me, you look exactly like her mother did at your age." He paused, pulling out his phone with trembling hands. "We never stopped looking. Never stopped hoping. Tell me, please, tell me your birthday." Amara's mind was spinning. "I don't know my real birthday. The woman who raised me, Mama Kemi, she found me at a market in Lagos when I was small. She said I was wandering alone, crying. I couldn't remember anything before that day. Not my name, not where I came from, nothing. She gave me the name Amara and picked a random date for my birthday." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Are you saying that you're—" Before she could finish her sentence, the front door of the mansion burst open. A woman's voice, sharp and cold, cut through the air like a knife. "Adakunal, what is the meaning of this? James told me there's a street beggar in our house. Security is already calling the police. A tall, elegant woman in a designer pantsuit strode into the hallway, her heels clicking against the marble. Her eyes swept over Amara with undisguised disgust, taking in her torn clothes, her dirty face, her matted hair. But when her gaze shifted to Adekunle's tear-stained face, something changed. Her expression hardened into something almost like fear. "Ngozi," Adekunle said, his voice steady now despite his tears. "Look at her. Really look at her. This girl, she has Chioma's birthmark." Ngozi's face went pale. "What are you talking about? That's impossible. Adekunle, you're not thinking clearly. This is obviously some kind of con artist who's heard about our tragedy and—" "Show her," Adekunle said to Amara, his eyes intense. "The birthmark. Do you have a small star-shaped mark on your left shoulder blade?" Amara's blood ran cold. Slowly, she turned and pulled down the collar of her ragged shirt, revealing the distinctive mark she had always wondered about, the one that looked exactly like a tiny star, no bigger than a coin. She heard Ngozi gasp, heard something that sounded like a sob or maybe a curse. "Someone call Dr. Okonkwo immediately," Adekunle commanded, his voice taking on an authority that made everyone in the room stand straighter. "We're doing a DNA test. Today. Right now." He turned back to Amara, and she saw something fierce in his eyes, something protective and desperate. "Whatever happens, you're not leaving this house. Not until we know the truth. Not until we find out if you're my daughter who was stolen from me 23 years ago." Amara felt the room spinning around her. Behind her, Ngozi's face had transformed into a mask of barely controlled rage. And somewhere in the depths of this massive mansion, Amara could hear more footsteps approaching, more voices, more pieces of a puzzle she didn't even know existed beginning to fall into place. If you're watching this story unfold and you're as shocked as Amara is right now, hit that subscribe button because this is just the beginning. What would you do if you discovered your entire life might be a lie? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The next 2 hours passed in a blur that felt more like a fever dream than reality. Dr. Okonkwo, a short, professional woman with kind eyes and efficient movements, arrived within 30 minutes of Adekunle's call. She set up her equipment in what Adekunle called the study, a room lined with leather-bound books and photographs of a life Amara had never known. Amara sat on a velvet chair that was softer than any bed she had ever slept on, watching as Dr. Okonkwo swabbed the inside of her cheek. Adekunle sat across from her, never taking his eyes off her face, as if afraid she might vanish into thin air. Ngozi stood by the window, her back rigid, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke in low, urgent whispers. "The results will take about 90 minutes with the rapid test," Dr. Okonkwo explained, sealing the samples carefully. "Mr. Balogun, are you sure you want to wait here? I can call you when—" "I'm not going anywhere," Adekunle interrupted firmly. "I've waited 23 years. I can wait 90 more minutes." As Dr. Okonkwo left to process the samples in her mobile lab van, an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Amara's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, reminding everyone that she had come here begging for food. She felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Adekunle stood up immediately. "Forgive me. You must be starving. Ngozi, please ask cook to prepare something." "I'll do no such thing," Ngozi snapped, turning from the window. Her eyes were cold and calculating. "Adekunle, you're being manipulated. Can't you see what's happening here? This girl probably heard about Chioma's kidnapping and researched everything. The birthmark could be fake. This is Lagos. People do worse things for money every day." "Then the DNA test will prove that," Adekunle replied calmly, though Amara could see his jaw tighten. "But until then, she is a guest in this house. A hungry guest. A guest." Ngozi laughed, but there was no humor in it. "She's a street rat who probably has lice and diseases. You're going to let her contaminate our home based on your desperate fantasies." "That's enough." Adekunle's voice thundered through the room, making Amara jump. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you will show basic human decency under my roof. This girl, whether she's Chioma or not, deserves respect and kindness. Ngozi's face twisted with something ugly. Your roof. Last I checked, I've been your wife for 15 years. Half of everything in this house is mine. You're my wife, yes, Adekunle said quietly. But you're not Chioma's mother. Her mother, my first wife Adana, died of heartbreak 2 years after our daughter was taken. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. You knew I never stopped searching. Amara watched this exchange with growing confusion and discomfort. There were layers here she didn't understand, currents of tension that had nothing to do with her. Before anyone could say more, a young man burst into the room. He looked about 25, tall and athletic, wearing designer jeans and a polo shirt. Dad, what's going on? The housekeepers are saying there's a homeless girl claiming to be Chioma. They said Mom called me home immediately because... He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes landing on Amara. For a long moment, he just stared. Then his expression hardened. You can't be serious. Tund, Adekunle said wearily. This is Amara. We're running a DNA test. A DNA test. Tund's voice rose. Dad, this is insane. Chioma is dead. She's been dead for over 20 years. You need to accept that and stop letting con artists take advantage of your grief. She has the birthmark, Adekunle said softly. Tund's face paled slightly, but he recovered quickly. Birthmarks can be faked. Tattooed. This is obviously a scam. How convenient that she shows up right after Forbes published that article about you being one of the wealthiest men in West Africa. Amara had heard enough. She stood up, her legs shaky but her voice steady. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know about any Forbes article or wealth or anything. I was hungry. I knocked on the back door to ask for food. That's all. I saw the photograph by accident. She turned to Adekunle. I don't want to cause problems in your family. Maybe I should just go. No. Adekunle's voice was firm. You're not going anywhere until we have answers. He pulled out his phone and made a call. James. Have cook prepare a full meal and bring it to the study. Now, please. Within minutes, a frightened-looking man in a white uniform brought in a tray loaded with jollof rice, grilled chicken, fried plantains, and fresh fruit. The smell made Amara's head spin. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen so much food at once. Please eat, Adekunle urged gently. Amara didn't need to be told twice. She tried to maintain some dignity, but hunger won out. She ate quickly, barely tasting the food in her desperation to fill the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. When she finally looked up, she found all three of them watching her. Adekunle's eyes were soft with compassion. Ngozi's were filled with disgust. And Tund's held something else, calculation, maybe, or fear. Tell me about your life, Adekunle said gently. You said someone named Mama Kemi found you? Amara swallowed her last bite and nodded. She found me at Balagan Market. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, wandering alone, crying. She took me home with her. She was kind, but poor. Very poor. She sold vegetables at the market. We lived in a single room in Ajegunle. Ajegunle, Ngozi muttered. One of the worst slums in Lagos. It was home, Amara said quietly, meeting her eyes. Mama Kemi wasn't rich, but she shared what little she had. She sent me to school when she could afford it. She tried her best. You said was, Adekunle noted gently. What happened to her? Amara's eyes filled with tears. She died 6 months ago. Malaria. We couldn't afford the hospital bills until it was too late. After she died, her family threw me out. They said I wasn't really her daughter, so I had no claim to her room or her market stall. I've been living on the streets since then. 6 months on the streets, Adekunle whispered, his face stricken. A young girl alone. The dangers. I learned to survive, Amara said, lifting her chin. I'm tougher than I look. Before anyone could respond, Dr. Okonkwo returned, her face professionally neutral. She carried a sealed envelope. The results are ready. The room fell into complete silence. Amara's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Adekunle stood slowly, his hand shaking as he reached for the envelope. Ngozi moved closer, her face pale. Tun's jaw was clenched so tight Amara could see a muscle jumping in his cheek. Dr. Okonkwo handed the envelope to Adekunle. Mr. Balogun, before you open that, I want to remind you that this is a preliminary rapid test. For legal purposes, you'll want a more comprehensive test from an accredited lab. However, this test is 98% accurate. Adekunle's fingers fumbled with the envelope. It seemed to take forever for him to tear it open and unfold the paper inside. Amara watched his face as his eyes scanned the results. She saw the exact moment he read the critical information. His eyes widened. His hand came up to his mouth. And then, to her complete shock, this powerful billionaire, this titan of industry, collapsed to his knees and began to sob. She's mine, he choked out through his tears. The test is positive. She's my daughter. My Chioma is alive. My baby girl is alive. The room exploded into chaos. Adekunle crawled toward Amara, reaching for her hands. Chioma. My Chioma. You came home. After all these years, you came home. But Amara barely heard him. She was staring at Ngozi, whose face had gone from pale to grey. The woman looked like she might be sick. And then Amara's gaze shifted to Tund, who had gone completely still, his face blank except for his eyes. His eyes were filled with pure, undiluted hatred. This isn't over, Tund said quietly, his voice like ice. I don't care what that test says. There will be other tests. Investigations. This story doesn't add up. Tund. Adekunle looked up from where he knelt, his face shocked. This is your sister. Your father's child. How can you? My sister is dead, Tund interrupted. And you need to wake up before this imposter destroys everything we've built. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him so hard the photographs on the wall rattled. Ngozi followed him without a word, but not before shooting Amara a look that promised consequences. Amara sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Dr. Okonkwo quietly excused herself. And Adekunle remained on his knees before her, tears streaming down his face, holding her hands like they were the most precious things in the world. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Chioma. I should have protected you. I should have found you sooner. But you're home now. You're finally home. But even as he spoke these words of joy and reunion, Amara felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. Because she had seen something in Tund's eyes, and in Ngozi's expression, something that told her this was far from over. Something that whispered this wasn't just about a long-lost daughter coming home. This was about power and money, and secrets that had been buried for 23 years. And someone in this mansion didn't want those secrets coming to light. The bedroom they gave Amara was larger than the entire room she had shared with Mama Kemi. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a sprawling garden filled with the same purple bougainvillea from her childhood photograph. A four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in soft cream linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. An ensuite bathroom gleamed with marble and gold fixtures. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. It felt like a trap. Amara stood in the middle of the room, still wearing her dirty street clothes, afraid to touch anything. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. A kind-faced woman in her 50s entered, carrying an armful of clothes. Hello, dear. My name is Blessing. I'm the head housekeeper. Her voice was warm, motherly. Mr. Balogun asked me to bring you some clothes and draw you a bath. These belonged to Miss Chioma before. He's kept everything all these years. Amara watched as Blessing laid out a simple cotton dress on the bed. "I don't understand what's happening," she whispered. Blessing's expression softened. "None of us do, child. But I can tell you this, I've worked for Mr. Balogun for 30 years. I was here the day Miss Chioma was taken. I saw what it did to him, to his wife Adana. It destroyed them both." She paused, studying Amara's face. "You look so much like her. Like Adana. It's almost like seeing a ghost." "What happened?" Amara asked. "How was I taken?" "It was during a birthday party in the garden. Miss Chioma's 4th birthday. There were so many guests, so many children running around. One moment she was on the swing, the next she was gone. We searched everywhere. The police searched. Mr. Balogun hired private investigators, offered huge rewards. But there was nothing. No ransom demand, no body, no trace. She simply vanished." Amara touched the birthmark on her shoulder unconsciously. "And his wife. Adana never recovered. She blamed herself, fell into depression. 2 years later, she died. The doctors said it was pneumonia, but everyone knew it was really a broken heart." Blessing's eyes were sad. Mr. Balogun threw himself into work, built his business empire bigger and bigger. Then 5 years ago, he married Ms. Ngozi. She was his executive assistant. Young, ambitious. It wasn't a love match, but I think he was tired of being alone. "She doesn't want me here," Amara said quietly. Blessing's face remained carefully neutral. "Ms. Ngozi likes things a certain way. Your return changes many things. Master Tund was set to inherit everything. Now." She trailed off, then seemed to catch herself. "I shouldn't gossip. Come, let me help you with that bath. You'll feel better when you're clean." The hot water was heaven. Amara soaked until her fingers wrinkled, watching the dirt from weeks on the streets swirl down the drain. When she emerged, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. Clean skin, hair washed and combed, wearing a simple yellow dress that fit perfectly. She looked like she belonged here. But she didn't feel like it. That evening, Adekunle insisted she join him for dinner in the formal dining room. The table could seat 20 people, but it was just the two of them at one end. Ngozi and Tund had apparently chosen to eat elsewhere. "I've scheduled a comprehensive DNA test for tomorrow at the best lab in Lagos," Adekunle said, serving her rice and stew with his own hands. "Not because I doubt the results, but because I want documentation that no one can question. I'm also hiring investigators to find out what happened to you, how you ended up at that market." "Do you remember anything from before?" he asked gently. "Anything at all?" Amara thought hard, searching through the fog of forgotten years. "Sometimes I have dreams. A garden with flowers. A swing. A woman singing. But I never knew if they were real memories or just things I imagined." "Your mother used to sing to you every night," Adekunle said, his voice thick with emotion. "Adana had the most beautiful voice. And you loved that swing. You would beg to be pushed higher and higher until she worried you'd fly away." He smiled sadly. "I suppose in a way you did." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Adekunle said, "I need to tell you something. About the inheritance, about what your return means." "I don't want anything," Amara said quickly. "I didn't come here for money. I didn't even know who you were." "I know that," Adekunle assured her. "But the fact remains, you are my legitimate heir. Under Nigerian law, you have rights to my estate. Tund is my son, yes, but from my second marriage. You are my firstborn. That matters legally." "Is that why they hate me? Tund and Ngozi?" Adekunle sighed heavily. "Tund has been raised thinking he would inherit the Balogun Empire. Ngozi has been the lady of this house for 5 years. Your return disrupts their plans, their expectations. But that's not your fault, Chioma. None of this is your fault." "Please don't call me that yet," Amara said softly. "I've been Amara for so long. Chioma feels like a stranger's name. Of course. I'm sorry. Amara, then. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We have time. All the time in the world to figure this out together. But they didn't have time. Because at that moment, Tund burst into the dining room, his phone in his hand, his face triumphant and cruel. Dad, you need to see this. Right now. He thrust the phone toward Adekunle. I hired my own investigator. Just got the preliminary report. Very interesting reading. Adekunle took the phone, frowning. Amara watched his expression change as he read, confusion giving way to shock, then something that looked like pain. What is it? She asked, fear creeping up her spine. According to this report, Tund said, his voice dripping with satisfaction, Mama Kemi, the woman who supposedly found you and raised you, had a criminal record. She was arrested multiple times for petty theft and fraud. And get this, she was questioned 24 years ago in connection with several child abductions in Lagos. Amara felt like she'd been punched. No, that's not true. Mama Kemi was good. She was kind. She wouldn't. The report also shows she came into money around the time she supposedly found you, Tund continued relentlessly. Several large cash deposits into an account under a false name, but linked to her through fingerprints. Care to explain where a poor vegetable seller got that kind of money? I don't know, Amara whispered, her world tilting. I was a child. I didn't know about her past or her money or anything. Adekunle set the phone down carefully. His face was troubled, but when he looked at Amara, his eyes were still kind. This doesn't change the DNA test. You are my daughter. But it does raise questions about how you ended up with this woman. It raises more than questions, Tund pressed. It suggests Mama Kemi was involved in the kidnapping. Maybe she took Chioma herself. Maybe someone paid her to take the child and disappear. Either way, this girl grew up with a criminal. Who knows what she learned? What she was taught to do? That's enough, Tund, Adekunle said sharply. Is it? Dad, think about it. A woman with a history of child abduction suddenly has a little girl with no memory? Comes into mysterious money? And now that woman is conveniently dead, so we can't question her? This whole thing stinks. Amara stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I loved Mama Kemi. She was the only mother I ever knew. I don't care what your report says. She fed me when she had no food for herself. She kept me safe. She sent me to school. Whatever happened before, whatever she may have done, she loved me. Or she kept you close because you were valuable, Tund shot back. Insurance policy, maybe? 23 years is a long time to wait, but with the Forbes article putting Dad's net worth at over $200 million, maybe she decided it was time to cash in. Then she died before she could execute her plan, so you came alone. Get out, Adekunle said quietly. Dad. I said get out. Adekunle's voice thundered through the room. That is your sister you're talking about. My daughter. Show some respect. Tund's jaw clenched, but he left, taking his damning phone with him. The silence he left behind was heavy and poisonous. I should go, Amara said, tears streaming down her face. I'm causing too much trouble. Your family is falling apart because of me. No. Adekunle stood and came around the table, pulling her into an embrace. My family was already broken, Amara. You didn't break it. If anything, you've exposed cracks that were always there. He held her as she cried. We'll investigate what happened. We'll find the truth. But whatever that truth is, you are my daughter. The DNA doesn't lie. And I won't lose you again. But even as he held her, Amara couldn't shake the terrible feeling that Tund was right about one thing. There were too many coincidences, too many convenient gaps in her story. What if Mama Kemi had been involved in her kidnapping? What if the only mother she'd ever known was actually the person who had stolen her from her real family? And if that was true, what other secrets was Mama Kemi hiding? What else didn't Amara know about her own past? Later that night, unable to sleep in the enormous bed, Amara wandered down to the study where she'd first seen her photograph. The house was quiet, everyone asleep. She stood before the wall of pictures, studying each one. Photos of a life she'd lost. A father who'd never stopped searching. A mother who'd died of grief. That's when she noticed something odd. One of the frames was slightly crooked. She reached up to straighten it, and as she did, the frame came loose from the wall. Behind it was a small hole, and tucked inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. With trembling hands, Amara pulled out the paper and unfolded it. It was a letter, written in elegant handwriting. The date at the top was from 23 years ago, just days after Chioma's disappearance. "My dearest Adekunle," it began. "If you're reading this, it means something has happened to me. There are things you don't know about Chioma's disappearance. Things I couldn't tell you. The kidnapping wasn't random. It was planned. And the person who planned it is closer than you think. I have proof, but I'm afraid to." The letter ended abruptly, the rest of the page torn away. Amara's heart pounded. This was written by Adana, her birth mother. Just days after the kidnapping. She'd known something. She'd had proof. And then she died 2 years later. Amara's hands shook as she reread the words. "The person who planned it is closer than you think." Footsteps sounded behind her. Amara spun around to find Ngozi standing in the doorway, wearing a silk robe, her face illuminated by the dim light. Her eyes were fixed on the letter in Amara's hands. "Where did you get that?" Ngozi's voice was barely a whisper, but there was something in it that made Amara's blood run cold. "It was hidden behind the picture," Amara said, taking a step back. "It's from Adana. She knew something about the kidnapping." Ngozi's face was unreadable. "Give it to me." "No. This belongs to Adekunle. He needs to see it." "I said give it to me." Ngozi stepped forward, and there was something predatory in her movement. "You have no idea what you're meddling with, girl. Some secrets are buried for a reason." "What secrets?" Amara demanded, her back now against the wall. "What do you know?" Before Ngozi could answer, a loud crash echoed through the house. Glass shattering. A scream. And then Tun's voice, shouting for help. Both women ran toward the sound, Amara still clutching the letter. They burst into the main hallway to find chaos. The front door was hanging open. Wind howled through the house. And there, lying at the foot of the grand staircase in a spreading pool of blood, was Adekunle. Comment below where you're watching from, and tell us what you think just happened. And if you're as hooked as we think you are, hit that like button and share this story with someone who loves a good mystery. Trust us, you won't want to miss what happens next. Amara's scream pierced the night air as she ran toward Adekunle's motionless body. Blood seeped from a gash on his head, staining the white marble beneath him. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and ragged. "Dad!" Tund was already kneeling beside him, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, this is an emergency. My father has fallen down the stairs. He's unconscious and bleeding. Send an ambulance to the Balogun residence immediately." Blessing appeared from somewhere, still in her nightclothes, carrying towels. She pressed one gently against Adekunle's head wound, her hands steady despite her tears. "Mr. Balogun, can you hear me? Please, sir, stay with us." Amara knelt on his other side, taking his hand. It was still warm, his pulse still beating beneath her fingers. "Please don't die," she whispered. "I just found you. Please. Get away from him," Ngozi hissed, suddenly beside her. "You did this. You brought chaos into this house, and now look what's happened. How dare you?" Amara turned on her, fury overriding her fear. "I was with you when we heard the crash. You know I didn't do this." "Maybe not directly," Ngozi said coldly. "But your presence here, this whole situation, it's driven him mad. He was probably agitated, not paying attention, and he fell. Tund looked up from his father, his face pale. The front door is wide open. Dad wouldn't have opened it in the middle of the night. Someone broke in. For the first time, they all turned to look at the door. It wasn't just open, the lock was damaged, the wood around it splintered. Someone had forced their way in, or forced their way out. Check the security footage, Ngozi ordered. Now. James, the security guard who had let Amara in that morning, appeared looking terrified. Ma'am, the security system was disabled about 20 minutes ago. Someone cut the power to the cameras. How is that possible? Tund demanded. This house has state-of-the-art security. Someone who knew the system, James said quietly. Someone who knew exactly where the main control panel was and how to bypass it. The implication hung in the air, heavy and accusing. Everyone in this house knew the security system. The ambulance sirens grew louder, and within minutes, paramedics were rushing through the door. They worked quickly, stabilizing Adekunle, checking his vitals, loading him onto a stretcher. He has a severe head injury and possible internal injuries, the lead paramedic reported. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. Who's riding with him? I am, Tund said firmly. Me too, Amara added, still holding Adekunle's hand. Ngozi's face twisted with rage. You have no right. You're not family. You're a stranger who showed up yesterday claiming to be his daughter. The DNA test says otherwise, Amara shot back. One preliminary test that could have been faked or tampered with, Ngozi countered. For all we know, you orchestrated this whole thing. You and whoever helped you break in tonight. That's insane, Amara protested. Is it? You show up with some convenient story about being found at a market. You have a birthmark that could be tattooed. You manipulate my husband into believing you're his long-lost daughter. And the same night we discover your so-called adoptive mother was a criminal with a history of child abduction. My husband nearly dies under mysterious circumstances. That seems like quite a coincidence. Ma'am, we need to go now, the paramedic interrupted. His condition is critical. In the end, both Tund and Amara rode in the ambulance while Ngozi followed in her Mercedes. The ride to the hospital was tense and silent except for the beeping of medical equipment. Amara stared at Adekunle's pale face, willing him to open his eyes, to squeeze her hand, to give any sign that he would be okay. At the hospital, they were ushered into a private waiting room while Adekunle was taken into surgery. The doctor, a serious man with graying temples, explained that Adekunle had a skull fracture and possible brain swelling. The next few hours would be critical. The waiting was torture. Amara sat clutching the letter she'd found, the one from Adana that hinted at dangerous secrets. She read it over and over, trying to decipher what Adana had known, what proof she'd had. But the torn page left too many questions unanswered. What's that? Tund asked suddenly, nodding at the letter. Amara hesitated, then decided he deserved to know. I found it hidden behind one of the photographs in the study. It's from your father's first wife, Adana. She wrote it days after Chioma was kidnapped. She handed him the letter. Tund read it, his expression darkening with each word. She knew something. She had proof about who planned the kidnapping. He looked up at Amara. And you found this tonight? Right before Dad fell. I found it minutes before. Ngozi saw me with it. She was trying to take it from me when we heard the crash. Tund's eyes narrowed. Ngozi saw this letter? Yes. She seemed upset. Afraid, even. She told me some secrets are buried for a reason. Before Tund could respond, Ngozi entered the waiting room, her phone in her hand. Her composure was cracking, her eyes red-rimmed and anxious. Any news? Still in surgery, Tund said. He held up the letter. We need to talk about this. Ngozi's face went pale. Where did you get that? Amara found it hidden in the study. A letter from Adana suggesting she knew who planned Chioma's kidnapping. Interesting that Dad's accident happened right after this letter was discovered, don't you think? What are you implying? Ngozi's voice was sharp. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Someone disabled our security system tonight. Someone who knew exactly how to do it. Someone who had access to the house. And my father ends up at the bottom of the stairs with a letter in Amara's possession that suggests dangerous secrets about the kidnapping. You can't possibly think Ngozi started. I don't know what to think anymore, Tund interrupted. But I'm going to find out. I'm calling the police. This wasn't an accident. No, Ngozi said sharply. Then, more controlled, no police. Not yet. Think about it, Tund. A police investigation means media attention. Reporters digging into our family's business. Your father's company stock will take a hit. Competitors will circle like sharks. We need to handle this privately. A man is fighting for his life, Amara said quietly. Your husband. Don't you care more about finding out what happened than protecting the company's reputation? Ngozi turned on her with cold fury. Don't you dare judge me. You know nothing about what it takes to maintain an empire like this. Nothing about the sacrifices required. What sacrifices? Amara pressed. What are you so afraid of people finding out? The tension in the room was suffocating. Tund looked between the two women, something shifting in his expression. Mother, he said slowly, and Amara noticed he'd never called Ngozi that before. Tell me you had nothing to do with what happened tonight. How can you even ask me that? Ngozi's voice cracked. I love your father. I've stood by him for 5 years. That's not an answer. Before Ngozi could respond, the surgeon entered, still in his scrubs, his mask pulled down. His face was grave. Mr. Balogun made it through surgery, but the next 24 hours are critical. The head injury was severe. We've reduced the brain swelling, but there's a risk of complications. He's in a medically induced coma to allow his brain to heal. Can we see him? Tund asked. One visitor at a time, briefly. But I need to warn you, he's not responsive. He may not be able to hear you. Tund stood. I'll go first. After he left, Amara and Ngozi sat in hostile silence. Finally, Ngozi spoke, her voice low and venomous. You should have stayed wherever you were. In the gutter where you belonged. Coming here was a mistake that's going to cost you more than you can imagine. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I don't know what your game is, girl, but I've worked too hard and too long to let some street urchin with a convenient story destroy everything I've built. I don't want anything from you, Amara said wearily. I just want to know who I am. I want to understand what happened to me. Some truths are better left buried, Ngozi said. Adana learned that the hard way. Amara's head snapped up. What do you mean? Are you saying Adana's death wasn't natural? Ngozi's face shuttered. I mean that pursuing dangerous questions leads to dangerous answers. Adana was obsessed with finding out who took her daughter. That obsession consumed her, destroyed her health, and ultimately killed her. If you're smart, you won't make the same mistake. You know something, Amara accused. You know what Adana discovered. I know that I want my husband to survive the night, Ngozi said, standing. And I know that if he dies, you'll have no protection in this house. No one to believe your claims or defend your rights. Think about that. She left the waiting room, her heels clicking down the hospital corridor. Amara sat alone, her mind racing. Ngozi's words had been a warning and a threat, but they'd also been a confession of sorts. She knew more than she was saying about the kidnapping, about Adana's death, about all of it. Amara pulled out the torn letter again, studying Adana's handwriting. The person who planned it is closer than you think. Closer. Not some random kidnapper. Someone in their inner circle. Someone with access to the house, to Chioma, to the family's routines and security. 23 years ago, Ngozi hadn't been part of the family. But someone had been. Someone who might still be there, watching, waiting, keeping secrets. Amara stood and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere out there was the truth about what had happened to her, about who had stolen her childhood, about why Mama Kemi had kept her hidden for so long. And somewhere in the Balogun mansion was evidence. She was sure of it. Adana had written that she had proof. If that proof still existed, if it hadn't been destroyed in the 23 years since Adana's death, then Amara needed to find it. But first, she needed Adekunle to survive. Because without him, she was alone in a house full of people who wanted her gone. And if tonight had proven anything, it was that someone was willing to kill to keep their secrets buried. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. With trembling hands, she opened it. Stop asking questions, or next time it won't be Adekunle at the bottom of those stairs. Leave the house and disappear, or you'll disappear permanently. This is your only warning. Amara's blood ran cold. She looked around the empty waiting room, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was. Someone was watching her. Someone knew she'd found the letter. Someone was desperate enough to threaten her life. She should be terrified. She should pack her few belongings and run back to the streets where at least the dangers were ones she understood. But as she looked down at the letter in her hands, at Adana's elegant script, she felt something else entirely. Anger. Someone had stolen her childhood. Someone had murdered or arranged for Mama Kemi's involvement in her kidnapping. Someone had destroyed Adana with grief and secrets. And now someone had tried to kill Adekunle, the only person who believed her, who wanted her here. Amara made a decision. She wasn't running. She was going to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. She owed it to Adana, to Mama Kemi, to Adekunle, and to the 4-year-old girl she'd been, the one who'd been ripped away from her life and left with nothing but nightmares and gaps where memories should be. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. She needed someone she could trust. The question was, in a house full of suspects and secrets, who could she trust? 3 days passed in a blur of hospital vigils and sleepless nights. Adekunle remained in his medically induced coma while doctors monitored his brain activity. Amara spent most of her time at the hospital, afraid to leave his side, afraid that something worse would happen if she wasn't there to watch over him. Tund came and went, his attitude toward Amara shifting between suspicion and something that almost looked like reluctant acceptance. Ngozi appeared once a day, stayed for exactly 30 minutes, and left without speaking to Amara beyond cold pleasantries. On the 4th morning, as Amara sat beside Adekunle's bed reading aloud from a newspaper, hoping somehow he could hear her, Tund entered with a manila folder under his arm. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Privately." They moved to the hospital cafeteria, finding a quiet corner away from other visitors. Tund opened the folder and spread several documents across the table. "I hired 3 different investigators," he said. "I needed to know the truth. About you, about Mama Kemi, about everything." He paused. "I owe you an apology." Amara's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" "The first investigator I hired was cheap and fast. He gave me what I wanted to hear, evidence that made you look guilty. But something didn't sit right, so I hired better investigators. More thorough ones." He tapped the documents. Mama Kemi was questioned about child abductions 24 years ago. That part was true. But she was cleared. She was a witness, not a suspect. Someone had tried to snatch a child from her market stall, and she fought the kidnapper off. That's why police talked to her. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. She was protecting children, not stealing them. The money deposits were real too, but they came from her sister who lived in London. The sister sent money every few months to help support her. I found bank records, letters, everything. Tund looked uncomfortable. "I wanted you to be a fraud. It would have been easier. But the evidence says otherwise." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think someone in our house is playing a very dangerous game, and they're trying to frame you for it. The threatening text you received, it came from a burner phone bought in Lekki 2 weeks ago. Whoever is behind this has been planning for a while. You know about the text? Amara asked, surprised. I saw you reading it at the hospital. You looked terrified. I took your phone while you were in the bathroom and checked. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I know, invasion of privacy. But I needed to know if you were the threat or if you were being threatened. Amara didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. And what did you decide? That we're both in danger. That my father is in danger. And that my mother knows more than she's saying. He leaned forward. I need to show you something else. After Dad's fall, I went through his private office, the one even the staff doesn't have access to. I found this. He pulled out a leather-bound journal, worn with age. It belonged to Adana. Dad kept it after she died. I've been reading it, trying to understand what she knew about the kidnapping. Amara reached for the journal with trembling hands. What does it say? A lot of things. But the most important entries are from the week before Chioma disappeared. Adana wrote that she'd noticed someone watching the house. Someone in a black car that parked across the street every afternoon for about an hour. She wrote down the license plate number. Did you trace it? I tried. The car was registered to a rental company that went out of business 15 years ago. But I did find something interesting. The rental was paid for by a corporate account belonging to Balagan Industries. Amara's blood ran cold. Someone at your father's company? Or someone with access to company funds, which narrows it down to senior executives and family members. Tun's jaw clenched. Adana also wrote that she'd hired a private investigator to look into the car. His name was Detective Olyamide Taiwo. I found him. He's retired now, living in Ibadan. I called him this morning. What did he say? That he needs to see us in person. He wouldn't talk over the phone. Said phones aren't secure. He wants us to come to Ibadan today. Tund checked his watch. It's a 2-hour drive. We could go meet with him, and be back before evening. Amara looked back toward the elevators that led to Adekunal's room. I don't want to leave him. The doctors said the next critical period won't be for at least 12 hours. They're going to try bringing him out of the coma tomorrow morning. We have time, and we need answers. Tun's expression was grim. Whoever did this to my father will try again if he wakes up and can identify them. We need to figure out who we're dealing with before that happens. Amara made her decision. Okay. Let's go. They didn't tell Ngozi where they were going. Tund simply informed the household staff that they'd be out for the afternoon. They took his Range Rover, and as they pulled out of the hospital parking lot, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The drive to Ibadan took them through bustling Lagos streets, past street vendors and overladen buses, through neighborhoods that ranged from gleaming high-rises to sprawling slums. Amara watched it all through the window, thinking about Mama Kemi, about the life she'd lived in those streets. Had she known the truth about Amara's identity? Had she kept her hidden deliberately? What are you thinking about? Tund asked. Mama Kemi. Wondering if she knew who I really was. The investigator found something else, Tund said carefully. About a year after she supposedly found you at the market, Mama Kemi received a visit from a lawyer. He gave her a large sum of money, payment for keeping you safe and hidden. The lawyer has since died, but I found his old records. The payment came from an anonymous trust. Amara turned to stare at him. Someone paid her to keep me? To protect you, maybe. Or to keep you away from someone. The payments continued every year until she died. Whoever set up that trust wanted to make sure you were cared for. Could it have been Adekunal? Tund shook his head. I thought of that. But Dad never stopped searching. He would have brought you home immediately if he'd known where you were. No, this was someone else. Someone who knew you were alive but wanted you to stay hidden. They drove the rest of the way in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ibadan appeared gradually, The old capital city with its mix of colonial architecture and modern buildings spread across gentle hills. Tund navigated through increasingly narrow streets until they reached a modest compound in a quiet neighborhood. Detective Olyamide Taiwo was waiting for them on his veranda, a gray-haired man in his 70s with sharp eyes and a watchful demeanor. He invited them inside, served them Zobo drinks, and studied Amara with unsettling intensity. "You look just like her," he said finally. "Like Adana. I see it now. You're truly Chioma Balogun." "How can you be sure?" Amara asked. "Because I was there the day you were born. Adekunle and I were friends from university. I wasn't a detective yet, just a young police officer. He called me to the hospital, so excited to show me his daughter." His eyes grew distant with memory. "I held you when you were 2 hours old. You had that same birthmark, that little star. I remember thinking it looked like a sign, like you were marked for something special." "Then you know about the kidnapping," Tund said. Taiwo's expression darkened. "I know what they told the public. Random kidnapping, no suspects, no leads. But that's not the whole truth. I tried to tell Adekunle, but by the time I had real evidence, Adana was dead and he was drowning in grief. He didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to believe what I'd discovered." "What did you discover?" Amara leaned forward. Taiwo stood and walked to an old cabinet, pulling out a box file thick with documents. "Adana hired me 2 weeks before the kidnapping. She was convinced someone was planning to hurt her family. She'd received anonymous letters, warnings telling her to convince Adekunle to sell his shares in the company. When he refused, the threats escalated." He spread photographs across the coffee table. Amara recognized the black car Adana had written about in her journal. There were also photos of the birthday party, the garden, and horrifyingly, several shots of young Chioma alone, unguarded, vulnerable. These were sent to Adana the day before the birthday party. A message. "Comply or your daughter pays the price." Taiwo's voice was heavy. "Adana didn't tell Adekunle. She thought she could handle it, thought if she cooperated with my investigation quietly, we'd catch whoever was threatening them. But she ran out of time." "Who sent the threats?" Tund demanded. "That's what I've spent 23 years trying to prove conclusively. I have suspicions, evidence that points in one direction, but never enough for a conviction." He pulled out another document, this one a financial statement. 2 days after Chioma disappeared, someone sold a large block of Balogun Industries shares. Shares that had belonged to a silent partner in the company. The sale netted 30 million naira, a fortune back then. "Who was the silent partner?" Amara asked, though she was starting to suspect. "Adebayo Okafor. He was Adekunle's business partner when they started the company. But they had a falling out 5 years before the kidnapping. Adekunle bought him out, or thought he did. Okafor kept some shares hidden under shell companies, waiting for his chance to force Adekunle to buy them back at inflated prices." Tund's face had gone pale. "Okafor? But he's been dead for years." 10 years, Taiwo confirmed. "Died in a car accident. Very convenient timing, right after I started asking questions again." He looked at Amara. "But before he died, he made a deathbed confession to his priest. Told him about his involvement in the kidnapping. The priest couldn't break confidentiality while Okafor was alive, but after he died, the priest came to me. Okafor didn't take the child himself. He hired someone to do it. Someone he paid very well to make sure Chioma disappeared permanently." "But I didn't disappear permanently," Amara said. "I ended up with Mama Kemi." That's the interesting part. According to the priest, Okafor's hired kidnapper was supposed to take you out of the country, sell you to adoption traffickers overseas. But something went wrong. The kidnapper got cold feet or had a change of heart. Instead of following through with the plan, they left you at Balogun Market and disappeared with the money. And then someone else, the person who set up the trust, found out what happened and paid Mama Kemi to keep me safe," Amara said, pieces falling into place. They knew I was alive but thought keeping me hidden was safer than bringing me home. Exactly. Which means there were at least 3 players in this game. Okafor, who ordered the kidnapping. The kidnapper, who botched the job but never came forward. And a third party, someone who discovered you were alive and chose to keep you hidden rather than return you to your father. Why? Tund asked. Why would anyone do that? Taiwo looked at him gravely. Because bringing you home would have exposed the conspiracy. Would have led to investigations, questions, discoveries. Someone wanted the whole thing buried. And they were willing to pay a fortune to keep it that way. A horrible suspicion was forming in Amara's mind. Detective Taiwo, when exactly did these annual payments to Mama Kemi begin? What date? He checked his records. The first payment was made on June 15, 22 years ago. Why? Amara felt sick. That's 3 months after the kidnapping. 3 months after Adana started investigating. But it's also 1 month before she died. The implications hung in the air like poison. Tund voiced what they were all thinking. You're saying whoever set up the trust, whoever paid to keep Amara hidden, did it before Adana died. Which means Adana might have known. Might have discovered that Chioma was alive. And if she knew and didn't tell Adekunle, Taiwo said slowly, then she had a reason to keep that information secret. A reason worth dying for. Or, Amara whispered, a reason worth killing for. At that moment, Tund's phone rang. He answered it, and Amara watched the color drain from his face. When? How long ago? We're in Ibadan, we'll get there as fast as we can. He hung up, his hand shaking. That was the hospital. Dad's regaining consciousness. The doctors are bringing him out of the coma early because his brain activity showed he was trying to wake up on his own. He grabbed his keys. But there's more. They found something when they were changing his IV. Someone had tampered with his medication. If the nurse hadn't caught it, the dose would have been lethal. They made the 2-hour drive in 90 minutes. Tund's knuckles white on the steering wheel as he navigated through Lagos traffic with reckless determination. Detective Taiwo sat in the back seat, making phone calls to old contacts in the police force, trying to arrange protection for Adekunle. When they screeched into the hospital parking lot, Amara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. They ran through the corridors, Taiwo's police credentials getting them past security faster than normal visitor protocols would allow. But when they burst into Adekunle's private room, they found it empty. The bed was made with fresh linens. All the medical equipment was gone. For one terrible moment, Amara thought they were too late, that he had died while they were racing back from Ibadan. Where is he? Tund grabbed a passing nurse. Adekunle Balogun, he was in this room. Where did they take him? The nurse checked her tablet, frowning. Mr. Balogun was moved to the ICU on the 4th floor about an hour ago. The doctor will want to speak with family before you see him. They found Dr. Adeyemi, the neurologist overseeing Adekunle's care, outside the ICU. His face was grave as he pulled them aside. Mr. Balogun is awake, but confused and agitated. He keeps trying to tell us something, but his speech is still affected by the trauma. He's asking for someone named Chioma repeatedly. That's me, Amara said. I need to see him. I should warn you, he's very weak. The medication tampering we discovered could have caused serious complications. We're lucky the nurse caught it when she did. Dr. Adeyemi's expression darkened. I've reported the incident to hospital administration and the police. We've also moved Mr. Balogun to a private ICU room with restricted access. Only immediate family on an approved list. Good, Tund said. Add Detective Oluyemide Taiwo to that list. He's investigating the case. Taiwo showed his retired police credentials and explained the situation to Dr. Adeyemi, who looked increasingly alarmed. You're saying someone in this hospital deliberately tried to kill my patient? We're saying someone wants him dead before he can tell us what he knows, Taiwo replied. Which means we need to hear what he has to say as soon as possible. They were led to a small, sterile room with reinforced doors and a security guard stationed outside. Adekunle lay in the bed, his head still bandaged, monitors beeping steadily around him. His eyes were open, but unfocused. When Amara entered, his gaze locked onto her face and tears immediately began streaming down his cheeks. "Chioma," he whispered, his voice rough and broken. "My Chioma. I'm sorry. So sorry." Amara took his hand gently. "I'm here. You're safe now. Can you tell us what happened? Who pushed you down the stairs?" Adekunle's eyes darted around the room, landing on Tund, then on Detective Taiwo. Recognition flickered when he saw Taiwo. "Olyamide. You're here." "I'm here, old friend," Taiwo said, moving closer. "We need you to tell us everything. Who hurt you? Who took Chioma all those years ago?" Adekunle's breathing became labored, the monitors beeping faster. "Didn't fall. Pushed. Saw the photograph, the letter. Knew then. Should have known years ago." "The letter from Adana?" Amara prompted gently. "We found it. She said the person who planned the kidnapping was close to you." "Too close," Adekunle gasped. "Family. Always family. The night of the party, I saw. But I didn't understand until now. The shoes." "What shoes?" Tund asked urgently. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "Red shoes. Designer shoes. Adana bought them for herself that week. Only 2 pairs existed in Nigeria. One for her. One for—" He trailed off, his eyes closing. "Dad, stay with us," Tund urged. "One pair for who?" But Adekunle had slipped back into unconsciousness. Dr. Adeyemi rushed in, checking his vitals. "You need to let him rest. His blood pressure is spiking. Too much stress could cause another hemorrhage." They were ushered out of the room, but not before Amara saw Adekunle's hand twitch, his finger pointing weakly toward something. She followed his gaze and felt her blood run cold. Through the small window in the ICU door, she could see down the hallway. And there, standing by the nurse's station wearing an expensive designer outfit and red heels, was Ngozi. Amara grabbed Tund's arm. "Your mother. She's here." Tund looked and his face went pale. "She said she was going to the company office today. She wasn't supposed to be here." Ngozi turned, saw them watching, and her expression transformed from shock to something calculating. She began walking toward them, her red heels clicking against the linoleum floor with each step. Click, click, click. The sound echoed in Amara's head, connecting to a memory she hadn't known she had. A child's perspective, looking up at someone tall. Red shoes. Angry voices. Being carried away into darkness. "I need to check something," Detective Taiwo said urgently, pulling out his phone. He made a call, speaking rapidly in Yoruba. When he hung up, his face was grim. "I just had a colleague check the old case files. There was evidence collected from the birthday party that was never properly investigated. Guest lists, photographs, security footage. I asked them to send me everything." Ngozi reached them, her face a mask of concern. "Tund. Darling. I came as soon as I heard your father was awake. How is he? How did you hear?" Tund asked slowly. "The hospital hasn't made any announcements. The doctor called me, of course. I'm his wife. They have to notify me of any changes in his condition." "That's strange," Dr. Adeyemi said, appearing behind them. "I haven't called anyone except the immediate family members already present. And Mrs. Balogun isn't on my contact list for Mr. Balogun's case. He specifically requested only his children be notified of updates." Ngozi's composure cracked for just a moment. "I must have been confused. One of the nurses must have mentioned it when I called to check on him." "The nurses don't have access to that information," the doctor replied, frowning. "And we've been asked not to share patient status with anyone not on the approved visitor list due to the security concerns." "Security concerns?" Ngozi's voice was sharp. What security concerns? Someone tried to poison my father, Tun said flatly. Tampered with his medication. The same night Amara found that letter from Adana, the one mentioning red shoes. Ngozi's face went white. Red shoes. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Taiwo stepped forward, his phone in his hand showing a photograph. This is from the birthday party 23 years ago. 2 hours before Chioma disappeared. Do you recognize this woman? The photograph showed a young woman in her 20s, beautiful and ambitious looking, standing near the garden gate. She was wearing a black dress and distinctive red designer heels. The woman was unmistakably a younger Ngozi. That's impossible, Ngozi said, but her voice lacked conviction. I didn't know Adakunal back then. We met 6 years ago when I started working for his company. That's what you told everyone, Taiwo agreed. But employment records don't lie. I had my contact pull Balagan Industries personnel files from 25 years ago. You were hired as a junior executive assistant 3 years before the kidnapping. You were at that birthday party as a company representative. And according to multiple witness statements that were never properly followed up, you were seen talking to a man matching Adebayo Okafor's description near the garden gate minutes before Chioma vanished. This is ridiculous, Ngozi said, but she was backing away. You can't prove anything with an old photograph. Can't I? Taiwo pulled up another image. This is a bank record showing payments from one of Okafor's shell companies to an account in your name. Payments that started 1 month before the kidnapping and continued for 2 years after. 20 million naira total. A fortune for a junior executive. Tun stared at his mother with horror and betrayal written across his face. You were part of it. You helped them take Chioma. No. Ngozi's voice was desperate now. You don't understand. I didn't know what they were planning. Okafor told me he just wanted information about the family's schedule, about the security system. He said it was corporate espionage, that he needed leverage for a business deal. I was young, stupid, and desperate for money. I didn't know he was planning to kidnap a child. But you figured it out after, Amara said quietly, pieces falling into place. When Chioma disappeared, you knew what you'd helped cause. That's why you took the money and disappeared from Adakunal's life for years. I was trying to fix it. Ngozi cried. When I realized what happened, I spent years searching for you. I hired investigators, followed leads. When I finally discovered you were alive, living with that woman in Ajagunal, I set up the trust. I paid to keep you safe and hidden because bringing you home would have exposed everything. Would have destroyed Adakunal when he was finally starting to heal. Or would have exposed your guilt, Tun said coldly. So you kept her hidden and then worked your way back into Dad's life. Married him. Made yourself indispensable. All while keeping the secret that you knew where his daughter was all along. I loved him, Ngozi insisted. I genuinely loved him. And I kept Chioma safe. I made sure she was cared for. Until she showed up on your doorstep, Taiwo said. Then you panicked. Because if Adakunal discovered the truth, if he found out you'd known where his daughter was for all those years, he'd destroy you. So you tried to discredit her, frame her as a con artist. And when that didn't work, I didn't push him down those stairs. Ngozi shouted. I would never hurt Adakunal. Never. Then who did? Amara demanded. Because someone broke into that house, disabled the security system, and tried to kill him right after I found that letter. Someone who knew what the letter meant, who knew what secrets were about to come out. Someone who had as much to lose as you did, Tund added, staring at his mother. Or maybe someone you called when you panicked, someone you asked for help. Ngozi's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went ashen. No. Oh God, no. What is it? Taiwo demanded. A text. From. She showed them the screen with a shaking hand. The message was from someone named O, and it read, failed again. The old man is awake. Time to disappear. Our deal is done. Who is O? Amara asked. Okafor's son, Ngozi whispered. Omololu Okafor. He's been blackmailing me for years, threatening to expose my involvement in the kidnapping unless I paid him and gave him information about the family. When Chioma showed up, he told me he'd handle it. I thought he meant he'd help prove she was a fraud. I didn't know he would try to kill Adekunle. I swear I didn't know. Where is he? Tund grabbed her arm. Where is Omololu right now? Before Ngozi could answer, the lights in the corridor went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. An alarm began blaring. Through the chaos, they heard screaming from the direction of Adekunle's room. Amara ran without thinking, bursting through the ICU door. The security guard was on the ground, unconscious or worse. Inside Adekunle's room, a man stood over the bed, holding a syringe filled with clear liquid, poised above Adekunle's foreline. The man turned, and Amara recognized him from photographs in the house. Omololu Okafor, probably in his early 40s, with his father's cold eyes and calculating expression. Stay back, he warned. I don't want to hurt anyone else. This is just business. Cleaning up my father's mistakes. By murdering an innocent man? Amara said, inching closer. By protecting what's mine. My father built half of Balogun Industries. He was cheated out of his share. And I won't let some street girl and a delusional old man take what I've been owed for decades. Behind Amara, she heard Tund and Taiwo entering. But Omololu was faster. He plunged the syringe toward the foreline. Amara didn't think. She lunged forward, grabbing his arm. The syringe went flying, shattering against the wall. Omololu shoved her hard, and she crashed into the monitors. But the distraction was enough. Tund tackled him from behind, and Taiwo was calling for security, for police, for anyone who could help. In the struggle, Omololu pulled a knife. I'm not going to prison for this. Not for cleaning up a mess that should have been finished 23 years ago. He slashed wildly, catching Tund across the arm. Blood bloomed on his shirt. But before he could strike again, Ngozi was there, slamming a metal bedpan against Omololu's head with all her strength. He dropped like a stone. Hospital security arrived seconds later, followed by police. Omololu was handcuffed, still groggy but conscious enough to understand he was caught. As they dragged him away, he looked at Amara with pure hatred. You should have stayed lost, he spat. Everything was perfect until you came back. Then he was gone, and the room was filled with police, medical staff, and chaos. Through it all, Amara kept her eyes on Adekunle, watching the monitors, praying that despite everything, he would survive this too. Dr. Adeyemi checked him over, relief evident on his face. He's stable. The sedatives I gave him earlier kept him asleep through most of this. His vitals are good. He's going to make it. Amara sank to the floor, overwhelmed. Tund sat beside her, holding his bleeding arm but not seeming to care. And Ngozi stood in the corner, tears streaming down her face, the woman who had caused so much pain and yet, in the end, had saved Adekunle's life. What happens now? Amara asked Taiwo, who was giving his statement to the police officers. Now, he said, we finally get justice. Omololu will be charged with attempted murder. Ngozi will face charges for her role in the original kidnapping and for withholding information. And you, Chioma Balogun, finally get to reclaim your life. But as the police led Ngozi away in handcuffs, as she looked back with an expression of regret and sorrow, Amara realized that justice was more complicated than she'd imagined. Ngozi had been complicit in the worst thing that ever happened to her family. But she'd also kept Amara alive, paid for her care, and in the end, had saved Adekunle's life. Some secrets destroyed. Some secrets protected. And some secrets did both at once. 2 months later, Amara stood in the garden where her childhood photograph had been taken, watching workers install a new swing in the exact spot where the old one had been. The purple bougainvillea was in full bloom, just as it had been 23 years ago. So much had changed since that chaotic night at the hospital. Omololu Okafor had been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and conspiracy. He'd made a full confession, hoping for a reduced sentence, revealing how he'd spent years planning to eliminate anyone who might expose his father's crimes. He'd been the one to tamper with Adekunle's medication, to send the threatening texts, to push Adekunle down the stairs when the letter was discovered. Ngozi's case was more complicated. She'd pleaded guilty to conspiracy and withholding evidence but had cooperated fully with authorities, providing documentation of everything she knew about the original kidnapping. Her lawyer argued that she'd been a young woman manipulated by a powerful man, and that she'd spent years trying to make amends by protecting Chioma. The judge had been somewhat sympathetic, sentencing her to 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 3. Before being taken away, Ngozi had asked to speak with Amara one final time. They'd met in a private room at the courthouse, with guards present. "I don't expect forgiveness," Ngozi had said, her designer clothes replaced with a plain prison uniform. "What I did was unforgivable. I helped destroy your childhood, your family. I kept you from your father for years because I was too cowardly to face the consequences of my actions." "Why did you marry him?" Amara had asked. "If you felt so guilty, why come back into his life?" "Because I genuinely fell in love with him," Ngozi said simply. "I know that sounds convenient, like I'm making excuses. But it's true. When I came back to work for the company 6 years ago, I told myself I just wanted to make sure he was okay, to watch over him from a distance. But he was so kind, so broken underneath his success. We started talking, spending time together. And I fell in love with the man I'd helped hurt so terribly." She wiped tears from her eyes. "I kept telling myself that keeping you hidden was protecting everyone. That bringing you home would destroy the life Adekunle had finally managed to rebuild. But really, I was just protecting myself." "You saved his life," Amara had pointed out. "That has to count for something. Maybe. Or maybe I was just trying to save myself from being a murderer on top of everything else." Ngozi had looked at her intently. "I kept records, Chioma. Everything about the trust, about where the money came from, about how I found you. I gave it all to Detective Taiwo. Your father deserves to know the full truth about how I kept you safe all those years, even if I did it for selfish reasons." Now, standing in the garden, Amara thought about forgiveness and redemption. Ngozi had done terrible things, but she'd also ensured that Amara survived, that she was cared for. The world wasn't as simple as good people and bad people. There was so much in between. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Amara turned to find Adekunle walking toward her, still moving carefully but growing stronger every day. The doctors said he'd make a full recovery, though he'd always have a scar on his head as a reminder of how close he'd come to death. "It's exactly like I remembered," Amara said, gesturing to the garden. "Or maybe like I dreamed. I'm still not sure where memory ends and imagination begins." "It will come back," Adekunle assured her, standing beside her. "Little pieces, bit by bit. The doctors say trauma often locks memories away, but they're still there, waiting." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Adekunle said, "I've been thinking about Mama Kemi. I want to honor her memory properly. She saved you, kept you safe when she had every reason not to take an estranged child. Whatever brought you to her, whatever money she was paid, she chose to love you and raise you as her own." "She did love me," Amara said softly. "I'm sure of that now. Maybe she knew who I really was. Maybe she didn't. But she treated me like I was precious. Like I mattered." "Because you do matter," Adekunle said firmly. "You are precious. And I've wasted so much time already. So I wanted to ask you something." He pulled out a folder from his jacket. "These are legal documents. I've had lawyers working on them for weeks. They would officially restore your birth name, Chioma Balogun, and establish you as my legal heir." Amara took the folder but didn't open it. "What about Tund?" "I don't want to take anything from him. Tund and I have talked extensively about this. He has his own trust fund and will inherit a substantial portion of my estate. But you are my firstborn, my daughter who was stolen from me. You have rights, Chioma. Rights that were taken from you 23 years ago. I don't know if I can be Chioma yet, Amara admitted. That name belongs to a little girl who had everything. I'm Amara, the girl who grew up in Ajagunal, who survived on the streets. I don't know how to be anyone else. Ajagunal smiled gently. Then be both. Be Amara Chioma Balagan, the girl who survived incredible hardship and the daughter who came home. You don't have to choose one identity over the other. Amara thought about that, about carrying both names, both histories. It felt right somehow. Amara Chioma, she tested the words. I like that. Good. Because I've also enrolled you in one of the best private schools in Lagos. You missed years of education, but the headmaster assures me they have programs for students who need to catch up. You're brilliant, Amara. You survived things that would have broken most people. Imagine what you can do with proper education and opportunities. School, Amara breathed, remembering how she'd loved learning during the brief periods when Mama Kemi could afford to send her. Really? Really? And there's more. I've established the Adana Balagan Foundation in your mother's memory. It will provide scholarships and support for children who've been displaced, orphaned, or trafficked. Children like you were. I'd like you to be involved in the foundation, to help guide its mission. Who better to understand what these children need than someone who lived through it? Tears filled Amara's eyes. A foundation for lost children. Mama Adana would have loved that. She would have loved you, Adekunle said, pulling her into an embrace. She would have been so proud of the strong, compassionate young woman you've become despite everything. The sound of a car pulling up interrupted them. Tund emerged, his arm still in a sling from the knife wound but healing well. Behind him came Detective Taiwo, carrying a briefcase. Sorry to interrupt, Tund said, but Detective Taiwo found something important. Something we all need to see. They moved inside to Adekunle's study, the room where this whole journey had begun. Taiwo opened his briefcase and pulled out an old video cassette. This was in the evidence boxes from the original investigation, he explained. Security footage from the birthday party. I had it digitally restored and enhanced using modern technology. There's something on here that we all missed 23 years ago. He connected his laptop to the television and played the video. They watched as the birthday party unfolded, children playing, adults mingling. Young Chioma in her yellow butterfly dress, laughing on the swing, being pushed by her mother. Then the camera angle shifted, showing the garden gate. A young Ngozi appeared, talking to a man who was clearly Adebayo Okafor. They were arguing about something, Okafor gesturing angrily while Ngozi shook her head. Watch what happens next, Taiwo said, pointing to the screen. A woman in staff uniform approached Chioma, offering her something. The little girl took it, probably candy or a treat, and followed the woman toward the gate. But before they reached it, another figure intervened. A woman with long dark hair, wearing an elegant dress. She spoke sharply to the staff member, who backed away quickly. Then the well-dressed woman picked up Chioma and carried her toward the house. Can you enhance that woman's face? Adekunle asked, leaning forward. Taiwo did, and they all gasped. The woman was unmistakably Adana, Chioma's mother. I don't understand, Amara said. Mama Adana took me? But everyone said I was kidnapped from the garden. Keep watching, Taiwo instructed. The video continued. Adana carried Chioma into the house, disappearing from view of the garden cameras. 10 minutes later, Adana emerged alone, looking frantic. She ran through the garden, searching everywhere, calling Chioma's name. Other guests started searching too. And all the while, the staff member in the uniform was nowhere to be seen. Adana wasn't kidnapping you, Adekunle said, his voice thick with emotion. She saw someone trying to take you and she intervened. She brought you into the house to keep you safe. But then something happened inside. Someone else took you from her. Someone who had access to the house, Tund said grimly. Someone the staff wouldn't question. Taiwo pulled out another document. I've been investigating everyone who was working in the house that day. Most of the staff have moved on or passed away, but I found one woman, the former head housekeeper. She's in a nursing home now, but her memory is sharp. She remembers that day vividly. What did she say? Adekunle asked. She said that Adana brought Chioma inside and took her to the master bedroom, telling the child to hide in the closet and not come out no matter what. Then Adana went back outside to confront whoever had sent that staff member to lure Chioma away. But while she was gone, someone else entered the bedroom. Someone who knew the house layout perfectly. Who? Amara demanded. According to the housekeeper, it was Okafor himself. He had a key to the house from his business partner days. He went straight to the bedroom, found Chioma, and carried her out through a side entrance. He put her in a car where the fake staff member was waiting. That woman was the kidnapper for hire, the one who was supposed to traffic Chioma overseas but got cold feet. She took Chioma to Balagan Market and left her there instead. So Mama Adana tried to save me, Amara whispered. She knew something was wrong. She tried to protect me. And it haunted her until the day she died, Adekunle said, tears streaming down his face. She blamed herself for not being able to stop them, for not getting back to you in time. She died thinking she'd failed you. But she didn't fail, Amara insisted. She tried. She fought for me. And because she hid me in that closet first, because she delayed them even for those few minutes, maybe that's what made the kidnapper change her mind. Maybe those few minutes were enough for the woman to see me as a real child, not just a commodity. They sat in silence, processing this new understanding of the past. Adana hadn't been a victim who lost a child through negligence. She'd been a mother who recognized danger and tried to protect her daughter, who fought against powerful enemies and paid the ultimate price. There's one more thing, Taiwo said. The housekeeper told me that Adana left something for Chioma. A letter and a gift, sealed in a box, with instructions that it should only be given to her daughter if she ever came home. The housekeeper kept it all these years, afraid to give it to Adekunle because she didn't want to cause him more pain. He pulled out a small wooden box, beautifully carved with butterflies. Inside was a letter in Adana's elegant handwriting and a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a star. With trembling hands, Amara opened the letter and read aloud. My dearest Chioma, if you're reading this, it means you've come home. It means you survived whatever terrible thing happened to you, and you found your way back to your father. I want you to know that I loved you more than life itself. Every moment with you was a blessing. You were my sunshine, my joy, my reason for everything. If I'm not there with you, it means I failed to protect you, and that failure cost me everything, including my life. But I need you to know that I tried. I saw the danger and I tried to save you. I hope that counts for something. This necklace belonged to my mother, your grandmother. The star represents hope, the belief that even in the darkest night, there is light to guide us home. Wear it and remember that you are loved, you are wanted, and you are worthy of every good thing life has to offer. Be brave, my darling girl. Be strong. Be kind. And know that somewhere, somehow, I am watching over you, so proud of the woman you've become. All my love, forever and always, your mama. Amara's tears fell onto the paper, but she didn't try to stop them. Adekunle and Tund were crying too, mourning the woman who'd fought so hard to protect her family, the woman whose love had transcended death itself. Amara lifted the necklace from the box. The star pendant caught the light, gleaming like it had been waiting 23 years for this moment. Adekunle helped her fasten it around her neck, and she could feel the weight of it, the history, the love. She knew, Amara said softly. Somehow she knew I'd come home. A mother always knows, Adekunle replied. She never stopped hoping. She never stopped believing. Over the following weeks, Amara began to truly settle into her new life. She started school, struggling at first with subjects she'd missed but discovering she had a natural aptitude for mathematics and languages. She made friends, though she was careful about who she trusted, that street wisdom never quite leaving her. Tun surprised everyone by becoming fiercely protective of his sister. The resentment and suspicion had melted away, replaced by genuine affection. He helped her navigate the complex social world of Lagos's elite, taught her which fork to use at formal dinners, and made sure everyone knew that anyone who disrespected Amara Chioma Balogun would answer to him. The Adana Balogun Foundation officially launched with Amara as its spokesperson. She gave speeches about her experience, about surviving trauma and finding hope. She visited shelters and schools, talking to children who'd been displaced or orphaned, letting them know they weren't alone. And slowly, carefully, more memories returned. The sound of her mother's voice singing lullabies. The smell of her father's cologne when he'd come home from work and lift her high in the air. The feeling of absolute safety and love that had defined her first 4 years of life. One evening, 6 months after her return, Amara stood at her bedroom window looking out at the city lights of Lagos. Behind her on the walls hung photographs from both her lives. Pictures of little Chioma with her parents, alongside newer photos of Amara with Mama Kemi, with street children who'd been her friends, with the life she'd lived in Ajigunle. She was both people now. Both stories. The lost princess and the street survivor. And she wouldn't erase either part of herself. Her phone buzzed with a message from Blessing, the housekeeper who'd been so kind from the beginning. "Come to the kitchen. I made your favorite." Amara smiled. Blessing had taken it upon herself to teach Amara all of Adana's recipes, to pass down that heritage. Tonight it would be jollof rice and plantains, made exactly the way her mother used to make them. As she headed downstairs, passing the wall of photographs where her journey had begun, Amara thought about destiny and choice, about the paths life takes us on and the strength it takes to survive them. She'd been stolen, lost, found, and reclaimed. She'd been hurt, betrayed, protected, and loved. And through it all, she'd remained herself. Amara. Chioma. Both. Neither. A girl who'd learned that home wasn't just a place you came from, but a place you fought to create, even when the whole world seemed determined to take it away. She touched the star pendant at her throat, feeling her mother's love across the years. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The homeless girl who'd knocked on a mansion door begging for food had found something far more precious than a meal. She'd found her identity, her history, her family, and herself. And no one, no matter how powerful or determined, could ever take that away from her again. As she entered the warm, fragrant kitchen where Blessing waited with open arms and a full plate, Amara smiled. Because she finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't about the mansion, or the money, or the name. It was about belonging. It was about love that persisted even through tragedy and time. It was about the people who saw you, truly saw you, and chose to keep you safe. Mama Kemi had done that in Ajigunle. Adana had tried to do it in those final desperate moments. And now Adekunle, Tund, Blessing, and even in her complicated way, Ngozi had done it too. Amara Chioma Balogun was home. Finally, truly home. And her story, which had begun with loss and trauma, had transformed into something else entirely. A story of resilience, of justice, of family bonds that couldn't be broken no matter how many years or miles tried to separate them. And as she sat down to eat, surrounded by the warmth of people who loved her, Amara knew that this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The first chapter of the life she was going to build, carrying both her histories with pride, honoring both the mothers who'd loved her, and stepping into a future that was finally, blessedly, her own. The end. If this story touched your heart, if Amara's journey made you think about family, identity, and the power of never giving up, then please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with everyone you know who loves powerful stories about survival and redemption. And leave a comment telling us what part of Amara's story resonated with you the most. Your engagement helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter how lost you feel, there's always a path home.